Well, what are you waiting for? Get them! Sunset heard Razor call behind her. She picked a solitary path and found herself separated from everyone else. She took a sharp turn beyond the canyon bed, around a narrow path. She blinked twice. For a moment, she thought she saw a flash of blue light, but quickly dismissed it. A shadow passed over her, filling itself to be Razor, as he prompted onto the path in front of her, forcing Sunset to slide to a halt. Well then, puppet, he said in a dangerously low tone, flexing his claws. Seems like I owe you a little payback now, don't I? Sunset noted the lady her blood staining his beak and smirked. There's plenty more where that came from. You keep following us. Sorry enough, but I've got a contract. I've got to come back with your head. The boss won't be happy. And it's a real bad idea to make her unhappy. And who is your boss? Razor wiped the dribble of blood from his beak. I would tell you, but you're about to be dead in a minute, so really it's your concern. He glanced at Sunset, swiping her around his claws. Sunset jumped back, narrowly avoiding a deadly gash, and jumped to the left as Razor followed up with an uppercut. Sunset's heart sparked to life, drawing up two large rocks from both sides of the canyon wall, bringing them together to smash her foe. Razor spun into the air, avoiding the crushing boulders, and dived down at Sunset at full force. Sunset leapt backwards, evading the initial dive, but was unable to avoid the follow-up punch Razor delivered, sending her sprawling to the ground with a sharp pain filled her chest. Now you see, folks, this is what I was hoping for. See, I don't ask much for when it comes to action scenes. I really don't. Razor fell upon her, being drawn a sort of white arc. Sunset threw up an thin seal between her and the metal blade. The two forces collided inches away from her face. You'll halt to blink and physically go. Razor sneered, throwing his weight with his sword. Sunset knew he was right. She couldn't lay there forever, but as a pair of pink hooves wrapped around Razor's face, she knew she wouldn't have to. Get who? A cheery voice asked. What the? Get off me, you little... Razor flailed, trying to get the pony off his back, failing miserably. Nope, try again. Pinky smiled, blinking at Sunset. Sunset got back to her hooves, a dull ache settling her ribcage. No doubt one of them was bruised. She shook off the pain and focused her attention back on Razor, just as one of his companions swooped and ripped Pinky off his back. Let me go! Pinky yelled as the griffin dragged her to the sky. Pinky, hold on! Sunset yelled, while a rush of wind whipped past her, carrying a multicolored blur. Don't worry, I got her! Rainbow called as she sought after Pinky's assailant. Sunset turned back to Razor and ducked as he swung his sword around her neck. Sunset twisted her body while she crouched low, taking advantage of the extra momentum Razor put into a swing. As he brought her hose back up, as much force as she could muster, delivering a square buck right into Razor's throat. He dropped his sword and clutched his neck, gasping for air. He fell to his knees, continuing to make sounds like a fish out of water. Sunset would have pitied him if he hadn't been trying to kill her, only moments before. Still, she wasn't cruel. Only taking a flat stone, she slammed it against the side of his head, knocking him unconscious. She dropped the stone and gave him a cold glare. Tell your boss I'm going to do the same to her when I get to her, Sunset said, though she knew Razor couldn't really hear her. She turned and charged further into the labyrinth, hoping to find her friends before the griffins could do them harm. Rainbow slammed into the griffin holding Pinky, causing him to squawk with surprise. He dropped his cargo, which Rainbow dived and easily caught, much to Pinky's relief. You okay, Pinks? Rainbow asked. Rude, but, Pinky pointed up. You look kind of mad. Mad might have been an understatement. Pulling out two katanas, the griffin looked absolutely livid. Laying out war screams, he charged at Rainbow, swords crossed. Uh-oh. Rainbow dropped out of the sky, deftly avoiding the two swords. The griffin dove after her, swinging madly, forcing Rainbow to retreat, Pinky in her hooves. She took off over the rock formations, swerving and ducking as the griffin kept pace, tip of the sword just out of clipping range of her tail. Rainbow flew over one of the canyons, veering to the left to avoid losing her tail, but something caught her eye. She grinned as a dangerous idea formed to her mind. Get ready to dive bomb, Pinky! Ooh, I love dive bombs! Rainbow swerved again, coming back around a particular section of the canyon at a lower angle. In front of her, Twilight and Spike were fending off another mercenary who was backing them against a dead end. Rainbow came in close, counting out the seconds in her head. When she got to one, she released Pinks and cried, Bombs away! Pinky fell. Legs and hooves splayed out as he began belly flopping into a pool. Still water, however, as he fell into the unsuspecting Griffin, knocking him to the ground. Rainbow began her ascension again, pulling up from the canyon. Another perfect strike, she said to herself. Now deal with Slasher Boy here. Behind her, the Griffin was relentless chasing her, though perhaps with a little less gusto. He's getting tired. Perfect! Kicking into high gear, Rainbow began to open the gap between herself and her assaulter. She looked back and saw him put an extra effort to keep up, but the exhaustion was written all over his face. Rainbow broke into a perfect vertical climb, feeling the air slowly grow cooler as she rose, welcome relief after spending so much time in the heat. As she had reached what she felt like was a satisfying height, Rainbow came to a stop and hovered in the air, waiting for the Griffin to catch up. The look of fury in his eyes had been replaced with a look of sheer annoyance. However, he did not waste any time in attacking the idle Pegasus. Rainbow narrowly dodged the oncoming slashes. Though the Griffin had grown sluggish, his attacks were still rather fast. Rainbow stayed on the defensive, reading and avoiding his attacks with her superior agility, waiting for an opening. He delivered a wide, horizontal cut while his other sword was down, giving Rainbow the perfect opening. She leveled a hard kick at his left claw, knocking the sword out of his grip. It flew into the air, spinning and catching the sunlight and silver metal, before dropping to the world below. Rainbow wasted no time in diving after it, catching the pommel in between her hooves. The sword was not meant for pony hooves, but Rainbow was able to get a steady enough grip in time to parry another oncoming blow. The two swords clashed, the sound of metal against metal ringing in Rainbow's ears, the vibration running up her forelegs. She was glad to choose not to hold it in her mouth. He pulled it apart. Rainbow tightened her grip, bracing herself for the next class. She remained in a defensive position, knowing her opponent had both the upper claw and both skill and speed. She had to be careful and wait for another opening. Griffin was tired and frustrated. Two things Rainbow knew made for bad flying or bad fighting. No, Cassandra. I'd like to bring up a point here. It's okay to allow the ponies to hold swords in their mouths. I know. Technically, it doesn't make real-world sense. Problem. Neither do Pegasus wings. They would have to be the size of a very, very large bird in order to hold those Pegasi. So, yeah. Let them do it. Both swords met, again and again. The sound of metal streaking through the air. Rainbow grabbed her retrieve, while ignoring the powerful shocks that coursed through her forelegs with each hit. The swords met once more, but while Rainbow had to use both hooves to hold her sword, the Griffin only had to use one claw. With his free hand, he swiped at Rainbow's face, forcing her to pull backwards, dodging the blow. Unfortunately, she couldn't outmove the sword that followed through with a slice. Tivo's blade came diagonally, catching Rainbow across the forehead, right above her eye, cutting off the tip of her mane. She cried out in pain, and with a strong flap of her wings, pushed herself backwards before she could take another hit. She could feel the blood freely flowing out of the wound, scaring the vision of her right eye. Before Rainbow could fully assess her injuries, the Griffin was on her once more, swinging his sword at Rainbow's midsection. He brought her sword up, barely blocking the attack. Force behind it was enough to knock Rainbow's sword from her hooves. It spiraled down to the world, leaving Rainbow defenseless. She quickly ducked out of the way of the next wave of oncoming slashes, back to simply dodging for survival. Rainbow broke away from the engagement, dived after the falling sword, knowing she would need it if she wanted to overcome her adversary. She pressed her wings tight against her body, the wind roaring past her as she plunged towards the earth. The Griffin fell after her, sword hauled drawn back, ready to run out through Rainbow. The sword slowly spun out in the air. Rainbow drew closer, waiting for the right opportunity to grab it to not cut herself. The sword hilt turned and pointed in Rainbow's direction. She quickly snatched it with both hooves, whirling around, slashing her opponent. It was caught off guard by Rainbow's speed. Her sword quickly caught the tip of his and sent it flying to the side, reversing their resistance. The Griffin stopped short, holding his claws up as Rainbow pointed the sword at his heart. "Give up," she said simply. He gave her a cocky grin. "You are cult of guts." Rainbow narrowed her eyes and jerked her hooves to the side. The Griffin gave a cry of pain and clutched at his chest, covering the long cut Rainbow had left him.
try me,
Rainbow said coolly. She wasn't entirely sure she could actually bring herself to kill him, but injure him to the point where he knew not to mess with her or her friends, she definitely could do that. Griffin growled and jumped higher into the air, reaching to a small sack into its empty scabbards. He pulled out a small spherical object with a small wire sticking from the top. He yanked it, and the small black ball immediately began spraying sparks, hissing madly.
Uh-oh.
Rainbow moved out of the way as the bomb was hurled at her. It sailed over her head and then down to the stone complex below. Rainbow didn't watch to see it detonate, for the Griffin was already pulling out another one. She rushed down, just as he lit the explosive, dashing to the side, forcing the bomb from his hand. Rainbow then took her sword and, with as much force as she could, delivered an upward slash, catching the Griffin's wing at the carpal joint, slicing it in half. Griffin yelled in pain, blood leaking out of the exposed veins in his wing. He began to fall out of the sky, wriggling, flapping feebly, trying to slow his descent. Rainbow watched him, unsure how to feel. Seeing how hard his wing was working, she was sure he would make it to the ground okay. But the fact that she had permanently disabled him nibbled at her mind. She knew what it was like not to be able to fly.
There again. He tried to kill me. So really, this is all his fault. He'll teach him not to be a jerk.
Rainbow nodded to herself, feeling reassured. She reached up and wiped the blood covering her face, opening her right eye for the first time in minutes, blinking rapidly to get adjusted to the sun. She felt a cut across her forehead and was relieved to find it wasn't that deep. Though it stung fiercely.
Oh, man. I would love to have a scar.
Her ears stood to attention as she heard a loud cry from below. Looking beneath her, she saw a large cloud of dust and smoke curling into the air.
The bombs!
Rainbow cried, diving towards the center of smoke.
Oh, man. Please let everything be okay. Please let everyone be okay.
You know, guys, I know of a couple of riffers out there who will complain about that whole cool fight scene above. They'll try to say, this makes Rainbow Dash and the others barbarians, as they didn't try to talk it out or try to reason with the Griffins before kicking their asses. They should have tried to talk and reason with the mass murdering killer mercenaries who wanted to cleanse the earth with their blood. No, seriously, that's how they act. Since it exited her teleportation spell, on the top of a small bluff between the two canyons, not far from her was the tallest tower of rocks that stood as a sentinel in the lonely desert. She had spent a good 10 minutes running around aimlessly, trying to find everyone else, till she had a better vantage point from a higher surface. She had barely taken 3 steps when an arrow struck in the dirt in front of her. Sunset jumped back and looked up to see one of the Griffins loading another arrow into her crossbow.
Hold still, or I promise I'll make quick work of you,
he said, taking him again. Sunset opened her mouth for a small retort, but the mercenary quickly fired, cutting her off. She ducked as the arrow whizzed over her head, creasing the top of her mane.
All right, then, you could play this,
she muttered. As the sniper reached into her quiver for another arrow, Sunset charged the magic arrow horn, focusing into one of her favorite spells. Her horn was cloaked in its teal glow. Magic threads of red and gold blended together, curved in front of her, making an ethereal facsimile of a bow. An arrow formed next, and the back end still tethered to her horn. Both Sunset and the sniper took aim at each other. Sunset's arrow retracted slightly, and whilst he was drawing back on the bowstring, preparing to fire, the sniper kept a claw over the crossbow trigger, eyes locked into Sunset. There was still a moment between them. Simultaneously, both of them fired the projectiles and rolled out of the way. Sunset's magical arrow flew into the air, fancying into the sun, while the physical arrow entombed itself into the earth. They began their dance, quickly reloading and firing arrows one after the other. While the sniper had to reach back and grab his, Sunset really conjured her ammunition with a thought. For every thought she fired, Sunset launched 2. Sometimes 3 when one would get dangerously close to its target. Sunset held her close face as well. Griffin wasn't a bad shot by any means. At times, she would have to retract her bow and throw a shield up to make sure she didn't get impaled. Still, the earth was littered with arrows that would never have found their destination. Dodging another Sunset's arrows, the Griffin took aim and laughed.
This has been more fun than it should have been, Nos. Well, I can't put an end to this now.
You're right, Sunset said with a grin. This is getting old. Her horn glowed brighter, and two additional arrows appeared along her bow. She drew them back, her grin becoming a wide smirk, and to look at the Griffin's face. She fired all three of them, wanting to fly her opponent, leaving the go contrails behind. They were quickly brushed away by the wind. To his credit, the Griffin had been able to dodge two of them, but the third one pierced his wing straight through, leaving smoldering embers throughout the hole, causing his wing to catch fire. He dropped his crossbow and grabbed his wing in agony, trying to put out the glowing flames. Sunset willed her bow to dematerialize, and his place summoned a powerful gale, streaming it directly at the sniper. Still nursing his wings, he had no time to put up any resistance, so was blown away, along with his crossbow. He sailed through the air until the current dropped him off in a distant crevice. With a exasperated groan, Sunset dropped to the floor. Once again, she landed on her sore ribs. The display of magic had taken little more out of her than it meant to. She took deep breaths to get her heart rate back to normal. Pressed herself back to her host. Don't have time to relax. Gotta make sure everyone's okay. A cry like an eagle filled the air, coming from the canyon to Sunset's left. Sunset rushed over to the exit of the bluff to see Applejack engaged in a mostly one-sided fight with the female Griffin Eliza. Eliza rapidly made swipes at Applejack with knives she held in between her knuckles. Applejack quickly danced out of her way, being pushed further and further back into the narrow canyon. She continued to move with the grace of a gazelle, fitting each swipe and stab like he should see each move before they were made. Every now and again, Applejack would lunge out with one of her hoes, catching Eliza in the chest, jumping out of range with her artillery slash, listening to a cry of frustration from Eliza. As amazed as Sunset was with Applejack's prowess, she couldn't let her friend fight alone, not when she didn't have to. Summoning her bow again, she prepared an arrow and took an aim, trying to hit square on Eliza. Sunset paused, a faint hissing sound passing through her ears. She turned her head and saw a small, round object drop out of the sky, hitting the ground a stone's throw away from her. The explosion rocked the earth, sending Sunset rolling across the bluff, her ears ringing in the aftermath of the detonation. She got back to her host, feeling new spots of pain where she had been struck by rocky shrapnel. She rushed to the rocks at the top of the cliff, relieved to see Applejack unharmed. Both her and Eliza were sinking themselves off from the blast, once they caved in the canyon behind them.
Applejack, look out!
Sunset called, pointing a hoof at Eliza, who had already recovered. She took a swipe at Applejack, who ducked, losing her hand instead of her head. Boom! Another explosion erupted their battle. Tall rock spire began to crumble, sending large rocks of rock into the canyon. Eliza looked up, then with a mighty shove, pushed the distracted Applejack into the shadow of falling stones. Time slowed to a crawl for Sunset. She saw the look on Applejack's face change from surprise to despair as the boulders came down on her. Too slow to do anything, Sunset could only turn her head away, unable to look. With a loud crash loud enough to wake the dead, the rocks collided with the ground, sending clouds of smoke and dust into the air. With a gust of wind, Sunset cleared a small path to the canyon floor so she could see her teleportation path. In a burst of magic, Sunset made her appear next to the rock slide, desperately hoping to find a conscious Applejack. She began shifting through the rubble, tossing rocks aside with her magic and digging with her hooves. Applejack! Applejack! Sunset yelled, praying to the Maker she could still respond. When no call came, when the dust finally settled, a hill of stones stood in the canyon. A few yards away from where Sunset was digging was an old Stetson caught between two stones. As silent as a ghost, Sunset moved to her hat. Her heart caught in her throat as she pulled the hat out of its entrapment. Sunset held to her hose, looking at how fine it was. She let out a scream of anguish and buried her face in it. This wasn't supposed to happen. Applejack wasn't supposed to die. No one was supposed to die. She can't be dead. She can't be. This is all my fault.
Sunset!
Sunset looked up and saw Rainbow Dash come to a stop above her.
What happened? I saw the explosion. I heard some boy screaming. Why are you holding E.G.'s hat?
There was denial in her voice. Sunset knew she had already pieced together everything. She just didn't want to admit it. Applejack, she, I could. She was. Sunset couldn't get her voice above a whisper. Nor could she string more than a few words together. Instead, she held the Stetson in front of Rainbow and said, "Gone." Rainbow's wings immediately stopped working. She crashed into the rock pile.
What you mean, gone? She can't be gone.
Her voice was hoarse, no doubt struggling with tears that were imminent. Her own voice quivering. Sunset said, "I used to push her into the plate of the rock slide, and I couldn't move fast enough." Sunset burst into tears. "I'm sorry, it happened too quickly, but she's gone, Rainbow."
No.
Rainbow shook her head vigorously.
No, she can't be dead. It's not possible. She's Applejack.
Letting out a scream of frustration. Rainbow tore into the rocks, tossing him aside.
She's in here somewhere, and she's alive. I know it.
Sunset just shook her head and placed Applejack's Stetson on the rock in front of her. "I'm sorry, Applejack. I failed." She closed her eyes and bowed her head in shame and defeat. She promised Princess Twilight she would save everyone. But now, one of the bearers of harmony lay dead, buried in a tomb of stone. How would the others react to this turn of events? Would they blame Sunset for Applejack's death? How would this affect the future? When Sunset opened her eyes, something gold flashed her vision. She stared down at the hourglass, gently swinging at her neck. All of the sand now lay at the bottom. A shadow of an idea flickered through Sunset's brain. Maybe it'll work this time. Think of the consequences. A voice of reason shouted. "I could save Applejack, but he could create a paradox. I could save Applejack, but he could jeopardize everything. I could save Applejack." Rainbow, who had been fruitlessly moving rocks, snapped her hat back.
What's he say?
Sunset jumped to her host, a gleeful look in her eye. "I think I'd save Applejack. It's still a crumbling recipe, but I might be able to do it." Losing her entire body, Rainbow gave Sunset her full attention.
How?
Sunset looked at the hourglass of hoof. "Time."
Like you said, that thing didn't even work.
"I know. Last time it didn't. But if I can get it to work this time, even though there's 1,000 different things that could go wrong, I might be able to save her." Rainbow looked from the hourglass, then to Sunset, her expression becoming hard. When it turned her stares, he said,
Let's do it.
"Let's? As in we? Oh no. Time traveling by myself is dangerous enough. I'm not taking a partner," Sunset protested. Rainbow stared at him and faltered.
Yes, you are. Applejack is one of my best friends, so I gotta make sure she comes out this alive.
"But," Sunset didn't bother her sentence. The unwavering look on Rainbow's face told Sunset she would not be denied. Sunset sighed. "Sure, why not? What's a few more paradoxes to worry about we make, huh?" Unless something persistent, Rainbow stepped closer to Sunset. Picking up Applejack's hat, she did. She was curious to the hourglass.
Alright, so how does this thing work?
Sunset took a deep breath, raising the timepiece to eye level. "It's pretty simple, actually. Just hang on to me." She felt Rainbow put a hoof around her neck, squeezing a little tight, like Sunset might try to run off. Sunset concentrated on the hourglass, focusing her convictions on one thing. "A noble heart, a righteous cause," she whispered. The world around her steadily grew quieter. Only the wind and Rainbow's nervous breathing made any noise. Sunset had opted to hold her breath, trying to repeat everything she had done for the first time. "Please," she spoke softly yet forcefully. "Take us back. 20 minutes. Just 20 minutes so we can save Applejack's life." She twisted the hourglass upside down, while the sand began trickling to the bottom bulb. She bit her lip at the spectacle, her heart sinking at the thought of Applejack staying dead. Then the sand stopped falling, shot back into the top bulb with the rest of the laying sand, and until only 20 beads were left. Sunset's eyes widened, she looked up, seeing the color slowly drain from the world until the entire landscape was painted black and white. The sound of the wind died away. Sunset was aware that even Rainbow Dash had fallen silent. Briefly fearing the hourglass had chosen only to bring her and no one else, Sunset looked onto Rainbow, who was still holding on to her. It's impossible not to see that Rainbow had indeed come from Sunset. Her bright colors were more prominent against the dull background than Sunset's own. Her eyes were wide and mouth half open. She seemed to have forgotten how to breathe. Sunset couldn't help but laugh at her expression. That laugh, in turn, seemed to put the wheels of time back into motion, only in reverse. Sunset could hear the familiar noise of a backwards winding clock echoing around her. Stones and gravel beneath her hose flew up into the air, forming into the tall pinnacle of rock it had once been. Twisting her body around, Sunset saw Applejack and Eliza having their bow in high speed in reverse, moved backwards to the canyon and out of sight, while Sunset found herself on top of the bluff, with Rainbow still hooked around her. The ticking stopped, and color returned to the world, followed by a sound and smell. Sunset was met with the musty odor of the desert. She lowered the hourglass, letting it hang loosely around her neck again. She looked back at Rainbow, who was still gaping like a vis, Applejack's head resting on her head. Yeah, Sunset chuckled. It's kind of a trip.
Did we really?
Time travel? Yes. Sunset said matter-of-factly. Rainbow looked at her, like Sunset was sporting a second horn.
That means you were telling the truth. The whole time you were telling the truth about being from the future. Being Twilight Student. Which means you aren't going to take the regalia for yourself and use it to take over the world.
You thought I was going to what? Sunset asked incredulously.
Nothing,
Rainbow said quickly, though the embarrassed look on her face said something else. Sunset rolled her eyes. Anyway, we need to move quickly. We've only got 20 minutes. This means I have less than 20 minutes to figure out a plan to save Applejack and not completely destroy the space-time continuum.
You mean you didn't have one before you left?
I didn't think we'd make it this far, Sunset shrugged. But now we're here, we have to be careful. We have to save Applejack with as little to no interference with what's about to happen. She slugged the hoof against her face. Then, I had to figure out how to make it so there are two of us in the same time period.
What do you mean?
Think about it, Rainbow. If we do save Applejack, that means we never go back in time. And if we never go back in time, that means the two of us we currently are will cease to exist. That means, or we'll have to explain to our other selves why there are two of us. Rainbow's left eye gave a subtle twitch.
Wait, what?
Sunset failed her hose. Just don't think about it, and hope I can figure something out. Come on. The best way to save Applejack is to keep an eye on her from afar.
Then, why don't we just wait here? This is where everything happens.
Can't stay here because we'll be seen. We have to interfere as little as possible. If we stay up here, Pasby is going to see us, and then I'll probably blow up brain gaskets. Rainbow crossed her hose in annoyance.
This time travel stuff is starting to sound pretty lame.
Well, how would you react if you saw another you walking around?
I'd be like, hey, Jas, looking awesome. Want a race?
Sunset face off.
Never mind.
Just follow me. With bright flash, she teleported to the canyon floor. Rainbow was slipping down next to her. Sunset looked right, then left, trying to figure out a way to go. Above her in the distance, she heard a distant cry of an eagle. Hide! Sunset hissed, sounding for a suitable place to conceal herself. She spotted a small crevice in the side of the canyon wall, grabbed Rainbow by the hoof, dragging her over. Little squeezes and narrow passes was opened up a little more after the threshold.
Why are we hiding?
Rainbow asked, trying to look over Sunset's shoulder to the outside world. Told you, we can't be seen, especially by the griffins. They're about to fly over. Sure enough, two shadows flew across the dirt in front of the mouth of the crevice. The sound of beating wings could be faintly heard. Sunset waited a few seconds before deciding I've definitely left. She crept out of the cave, motioning for Rainbow to follow her. Duo snuck through the canyon, Sunset creeping along the stone floor, while Rainbow hovered over her. It came to a bend. Sunset pressed herself against the wall, carefully peering over the edge. In front of her were the griffins, facing about the opening. On the other side, Sunset was sure her past self was against the wall, hiding everyone with a canvas swath spell.
Curse this Dozalaya,
Sunset heard Razor growl. Must be messing with my senses.
Swear those ponies should be right here.
Jesus, this is so weird, Rainbow whispered. No. Talk about deja vu. Sunset nodded in agreement. As they watched the scene play out before them, Sunset continued to craft a plan to save Applejack in the least paradoxical way possible. though each plan was more ridiculous and complicated than the last. She heard something scraping around her and turned to see Rainbow picking up a small rock. "What are you doing?" Sunset asked warily. Rainbow tossed the stone up and down in her hoof.
Got an idea. Just let the Griffins chase us instead. That way, everyone else can get out here alive.
Sunset shook her head.
No, Rainbow, I told you. We can't. No, Rainbow, stop!
She hissed as Rainbow lobbing the stone at Razor's head. She grabbed Rainbow by the tail and pulled her back further out of sight.
What blazes?
Achoo! Sunset exhaled a sigh of relief upon hearing Pinky sneeze, knowing it would distract Razor. She glared at Rainbow, who was pouting in disappointment.
Rainbow, stop doing things that
didn't happen the first time. Sunset trailed off, a look of realization flickering her eyes.
Run!
Sunset heard herself yell, snapping out of her thoughts. Sunset grabbed Rainbow by the hoof again.
We have to move before someone comes down here and sees us. Ugh, you and your stupid time travel rules. Well,
Rainbow was cut off by Sunset, yanking her tail, leading her back down the canyon path. Hearing the rapid approach of footsteps behind her, Sunset pulled Rainbow closer and charged her horn, wrapping both of them in her teal aura and teleporting away. They reappear at a three-way intersection of sorts, part of the canyon running both ways in front of them. Rainbow fell to the ground, her eyes spinning into her socket.
Man, I hate when you guys do that.
Sorry, but we really have to be careful, at least until I can piece together a plan. Rainbow used her wings to dust herself off.
All right, you and your time mumbo jumbo. So, what do we do now?
Sunset looked at each of the three paths, listening for any activity. We need to keep an eye on Applejack so we can intervene at the right moment.
And what exactly is the right moment?
Sunset didn't answer. Her mind retreated back to when Rainbow had thrown a rock at Razor. She had seen the event from both perspectives now. The first time she barely regarded it, since it had done nothing to help her. She then thought of the blue light she had seen while she was fleeing from Razor. Something else she had dismissed as a trick glare. What if? Sunset mumbled to herself. She picked up a pointed stone and began to scribble in the dirt, drawing a large circle and marking various points on it. If Rainbow threw the rock, and what I saw was us teleporting, then that means... Rainbow floated in the air above her, examining the hastily made diagram.
What are you muttering about?
Dropping the rock, Sunset rubbed her dusty hose together and gave a rather devious laugh. I've got a plan. The perfect plan to fix everything. Her face lighting up, Rainbow asked eagerly,
What is it? Tell me.
In a minute. First, we have to get into position. By now, I should have finished knocking out Razor, so we have to get back to that part of the canyon before Eliza and Applejack do. Sunset galloped off without waiting for a response from Rainbow, decided just to make sure she didn't teleport into the middle of another fight that may have taken place after hers. They navigated the rocky labyrinth, eventually making their way back to where they started. Just in time for them to see the sniper Sunset had dueled slip down and collect Razor's unconscious form, moving him somewhere else. Sunset led Rainbow down the path, back to the crevice, stopping to examine the area and position the pillar stone looming over them. Okay, Rainbow, pay attention. Sunset spoke quickly. Those rocks are going to fall. And Applejack will stand right about here. She pointed a hoof. You're going to be over there, camouflaged, until I give you a signal. When the second explosion goes off, Eliza's going to push the Applejack directly to your line of sight. I'll slow down the boulders for 2 seconds, but you're going to move fast as you can. Snap Applejack and bring her to the cave. Got it?
Wait. You want me to save AT at the last possible moment? Why?
Because, and I know this is going to sound cruel, we have to think Applejack died. Let me explain. Sunset pussed, seeing Rainbow was about to protest. When I saw the boulders falling towards Applejack, I looked away at the last moment because I couldn't bear to watch. When I looked back, all I saw was a mountain of stone, and assumed he had been buried underneath it. That's what prompted us to go back in time. If we recreate at that, then the past versions of ourselves will still think Applejack got crushed, thus creating a tiny need to time travel. Does you see? It'll create a closed loop, meaning no paradoxes. The perfect time travel! Rainbow looked at the large smile plastered on Sunset's face and took a step back.
So, you want us to trick ourselves so that we go back in time and trick ourselves? Exactly.
I love this plan! I'm glad to be part of it! Rainbow stared at her constantly opening her mouth to say something, only to close and shake her head. Eventually, she said,
Fine, sure, let's do this.
Excellent, Sunset beamed. Now go stand right over there, move a little more to the left. Perfect. Now, I'm going to cast my camouflage spell on you, so make sure you stay as still as possible until I give you the signal.
Got it.
Sunset back to the cave, crouching low. Believing it would decrease the chance of her being seen. Her horn glowed softly, creating a teal line around Rainbow until she blended in against the rock she was braced on. We only get one shot, so we had to make it count. Sunset couldn't bear to think of what would happen if they failed. But it had to have worked before, right? We're just fulfilling the rules that were set for us. But history isn't set in stone, right? So we could still fail. She shook her head at the thoughts. They couldn't fail. There was too much at stake. The two mares didn't have to wait long. Liza's screeches was soon heard echoing across the desert. The sea and Applejack soon came into view. Applejack swiftly dodging all the Liza's attacks and carrying with a few of her own.
Damn off, Polly.
That's really starting to get on my nerves, Liza said, making a wild slash at Applejack, who moved to the left and struck out with her right hoof, catching Liza in the ribs. Should have known better than the mess of her ponies, Applejack smirked. Liza snarled and resumed her onslaught. The two of them moving closer to their destined positions. Squinting her eyes, Sunset looked up and could see the tiny black spear dropping out of the sky and impacting the bluff. Here we go, Sunset thought. As the first explosion went off, rocking the ground, bits of debris fell from the ceiling. A piece of rubble dropped to the Sunset's head, causing her magic to sputter. Rainbow flickered in and out of view until Sunset could control her magic again. Thankfully, Liza and Applejack hadn't noticed. Somewhere up above, Sunset heard herself call Applejack's name, waiting for Liza's next attack. Applejack dodged. The two companions resumed their fight until the next explosion went off. Sunset braced herself, watching as Eliza subbed Applejack forward. It took off as the boulders hurtled downward. Applejack recovered from the sudden push, only to see how close the rocks were, looking hopelessness in her eyes. Sunset disabled the camouflage spell, while Rainbow was simultaneously grabbing a majority of boulders with her magic and shouting, "Now!" Her voice was almost lost in the din of the avalanche. Rainbow heard her, and like a prismatic lightning bolt shot forth, snatching Applejack from underneath the winged boulders that had been mere inches from her face. She tumbled into the cave as the rocks crashed around them, partly sealing the entrance. You see, folks, this is how you demonstrate super speed. Not that hard.
Applejack!
Rainbow Sunset cheered, embracing her in a tight group hug. Oh, what just happened? Teal glow lit the cavern, allowing the ponies to see another. It's kind of a long story, Sunset said, really funny her voice. Well, let's look at. Weren't you up on top of the cliff a second ago? Applejack looked at Rainbow. Weren't you flying around the sky with the other griffin?
Like I said, long story.
Rainbow nodded her head.
Yeah, basically, me and Sunset went back in time and saved your life.
Applejack blinked. Y'all did what now?
Doesn't matter,
Rainbow said.
Point is, you're okay.
She flung her hose around Applejack again. Sunset saw tears escape Rainbow's eye. Well, how can you argue with that? Applejack said softly, returning the hug. When I saw all those rocks heading towards me, I thought I was a goner. Not sure what y'all did, but thanks for doing it. Sunset leaned against the wall, smiling in content. They won't die. I won't let them. Won't let any of them. Her mind flashed the sky chart in its body as it fell out of sight after being hit with a powerful blast of magic. She couldn't help but grimace. I may have been a coward, but no pony deserved to die like that. You ruined one for future Vesper Radiance. I'm not going to let you ruin another, no matter what you throw at us. You okay there, Zuckercube? Sunset snapped her head up, seeing Applejack looking at her with a concerned frown. Yeah, just resting. It's been a long day. Applejack offered a hoof, which Sunset gladly took. I know. I, for one, can't wait to get some shut-eye. Right now, we got some griffins who need to learn a lesson. Sometimes, us ponies don't play nice. Rainbow pounded her hose together.
Yeah, time for a little payback. No one tries to kill my friends and gets away with it.
Sunset gave him a weary smile and walked over to the blockade entrance. Sunlight filtered through the top where there were fewer rocks. She could just make out herself and Rainbow on top of the pile. Rainbow gripped onto her, and Sunset was holding the hourglass. Sunset watched with wide-eyed amazement as they slowly vanished into thin air, fading out like apparitions. Her plan had worked. Coast is clear, Sunset said, letting the boulders out of the way, clearing an open path. As he stepped into the light of the sun, feeling the temperatures rise, and wishes he could see inside a cold cave. Alright, girls, let's get moving, Applejack said.
Wait,
Rainbow flew in front of her and held out the flat Stetson.
you almost forgot this.
Applejack beamed at her. She took the old hat and shook it out before placing it on her head. Flying Circle Cube, now let's go. Without another word, she charged off. Sunset motioned to follow her, but Rainbow placed a hoof on her shoulder, holding her in place.
Wait, Sunset, I want to say, look, I said some pretty mean things about you behind your back. I judged you before I really knew you. I was just trying to look out for my friends, but I'm sorry.
With a sympathetic smile, Sunset said, It's okay, Rainbow, and I've been meaning to apologize to you too. Sorry I threw dirt at you. And I never did take name calling very well.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry I called you an egghead. I mean, you are, but I still shouldn't have said it.
They both looked at each other, then broke into short fits of laughter. After a moment, they collected themselves. Rainbow held out a hoof, asking,
So we cool?
Sunset grinned and bumped it. Yeah, definitely cool. Good. Now kiss.